welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette and our live stream. Today, it's all about men's jewelry. So if you have any questions around that, please, I'm happy to answer anything you might want to know. And also, we're decided that we want to offer solid gold cufflinks. Now, gold is at like an all-time high and it continues to climb. So why would we decide now to offer these? Well, I've personally had, gold jewelry for a long time, and I noticed that, I like wearing things like my ring, for example, and it's a really cool way to just buy something that you like, wear it every day, and have it appreciate in value, right? That's a pretty cool concept. And then, we spend all this money, designing these beautifully carved cufflinks. Like we spent like $6,000 per shape to have these carved by a master jeweler for each of them, right? So if you were to, go to a jeweler and say, hey, I want an eagle pair cufflink, he had to put in all that time carving that and then doing it. So we figured, why not offer them? And because we can also do customization options, and every once in a while, people have asked us, hey, do you have solid gold cufflinks? Why do you not have solid gold cufflinks? And so we decided to do them. Also, we decided, to make them custom and not stock them, because A, it would be really expensive to stock them, and B, it's really nice to be able to, customize and say, oh, I'd like to have a little diamond in my eye, or a ruby, or a sapphire, or whatever it is. So that was kind of the idea behind it. We have all the shapes, we have all the things, and of course, when you go custom with cufflinks, there are all these things you can do. Most people, they think of gold as, oh, there's gold, right? And now, pure gold, right, was basically came from a meteorite that hit the Earth like billions of years ago, and it's throughout our, core. I think most of the gold on the Earth is in the core, and it's in certain areas. I think in the US, the place where you find the most gold is Nevada these days, and it's used, industrially in your phones, in your computers, but also for jewelry. And pure gold is very soft. That would be like, 24 karat gold is the pure gold, 999.9 parts of 1,000 in gold. And, the Romans, for example, would make coins out of that material. And it has a very beautiful color, but it's very soft. So for jewelry, especially things like rings or even cufflinks, like where you maybe touch things, you dent it, you scratch it, and that's not something that you want. You want actually a product that stands the test of time. And so over the thousands of years that people have been using gold, they figured out that if they blend certain things, that you actually get a better material. You get something that is more scratch resistant. You get something that is harder and less prone to break. And here, Fort Belvedere and Gentleman's Gazette, we're all about quality. We like the highest quality we can get. And so we carefully looked at, well, the golds that we want to offer is 14 karat and 18 karat. Why? Because those are the best gold options for jewelry in terms of longevity. So the 18 karat is basically, 750 gold, which means 75% gold. 14 karat is 585 or 58.5% gold. There's also, other things like 8 karat, which is, I think 333, 9 karat, 375. Sometimes you can find 20 karat gold, 21 karat gold. And you can even find people who make, jewelry in 24 karat gold. Now, the problem with that is it just won't last. It will bend, it will break. And yes, can you melt it down again? Absolutely. But it's, in my mind, not ideal. It's similar to a steak, right? If you first say, ooh, I want 100% steak, it sounds great at first, but then if you just grill your steak, you don't add salt, you don't add pepper, it just doesn't taste as good as if you add other things to improve the final result. It's the same with gold, mixing it with, palladium to get white gold and other elements just helps the material get better. Question is, how much can these designs actually be customized? Well, there are limitations, of course, right? If you say, hey, I want, this horse, but I don't want this and I want that, well, now we're talking, you have to take a wax model, you have to copy it, you have to modify it. That is all more work. That would all be stuff that you'd have to pay, right? If you just want it to be exactly like that and you add different stones, not a problem. If you want a certain finish, maybe even enamel, all much more doable. And with a custom piece, you talk it through, right? If you buy a pair of cufflinks, we'll have a conversation. I'll talk to you. I'll try to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. What vision do you have in mind? How do you want to wear them? What do you like? What do you don't like? And then looking at the different options. Also, most people think of gold. There's yellow gold and there's white gold and maybe rose gold, and that's it. But if you actually look, there's a ton of different options for gold alloys. It's always called an alloy when you blend gold or when you blend different materials together, right? Metals, it's an alloy, gold alloy. The majority is gold, but then you have, silver. Some people use nickel, some people use palladium, and you blend it to get things that you want. So, in a yellow gold, you could get, for example, a 14-karat light gold, then a different light gold, then regular gold, then like a rich gold. And then there's also rosé gold and red gold. Those are made by adding copper to it. Now with copper, when you melt this gold alloy, you have fumes. And so if you want to work with rose gold, you have to have a specific setup for that with specific venting. Otherwise, it can be really dangerous for the people who inhale these fumes. So that's why probably, rose gold is not always the most popular. There's also things like, champagne gold or green gold or gray gold. And you get these by adding different types of metals and understanding how they work. Now, we offer rose gold plated cufflinks. So what happens is, we like the jeweler makes them, they're cast in sterling silver, and then they're plated, but they're plated off-site in a lab where they have the exact setup for the rose gold plating, because it is, it requires a lot more capital investment to do that, and it is more difficult. Now, if you're set on rose gold, maybe we can, figure something out, reach out to us. I talk to the jeweler, but it's definitely always more tricky. But yeah, there's lots of, different options for the 18-karat too, and also when you cast gold, basically, you carve something in wax that looks like this, then you create a mold, and then you have to kind of pour the gold, and the kind of channel that gets the gold to the cufflink obviously is also full of gold. So once you have that gold, you remove it, and then when you polish it, you carefully collect all the dust so you can recycle it. But with 18 karat, some brands, they just kind of try to reuse it. But because of the heat, some of the metals, they evaporate and the composition changes. So in order to get the best result for your gold, you want to send it back to the company that, blends and creates all the alloys. And they charge a fee for that, of course. There's shipping, there's logistics, but then you get it back and you get only the prime material. So the way we handle it is, we don't reuse any old gold. It is recycled from the factory, so it's chemically at the exact level that we want, and you just get the ultimate best result. Why is it so expensive? Well, I just checked, and from like June 2015 to June 2025, so in this 10-year period, the gold price more than tripled, right? So just the base material is a lot expensive. And, if you go back like, 50, 60 years ago or so, people would often say, oh, gold is about 30 times as expensive as silver. Well, these days, we're more like, it's like 100 times as expensive. So things just change. And so, while it is an expensive upfront investment, I found that with all my gold jewelry in the past, I bought them, I wore them, and then when I didn't like it anymore, I could sell it for more than I bought it for, which is really nice. There's not many things, you know, if you buy a custom suit, it may cost, you know, $4, $5, $6, maybe even $10,000. You will not be able to sell this custom suit for that much. With a custom pair of cufflinks, you know, chances are in 10 years from now, if you need money, you can always sell it. People buy gold. It's a very kind of liquid form of an investment. Can you tell us more about the German artisan who will be crafting these pieces? Yes, you know, it's someone when I went to law school in Germany, I lived together with with someone, and I shared, you know, I had a room, she had a room, and we just shared the apartment together because, you know, as a student, you're strapped for money, so you have roommates. That's how it goes. And her father, you know, was a kind of famous, or still is a famous German jeweler, and so they made like very exquisite stuff, you know, but it was, you know, a pair of cufflinks cost 50,000. You know, they've collector customers who do all this, and then through a friend I came at someone who made an apprenticeship there, you know, and he learned all the craft, and then he went out on his own and started things out. And what I always appreciate about him is he has a very big range of jewelry that he can make. And now, you know, he liked me and really saw what I wanted to do, you know, and he liked the carving, and so he's always excited to come up with new motifs like the fox and stuff. And you know, he goes out and looks at the foxes and then all carves this by hand and does that. And so it's a really good working relationship between us, where, you know, he makes these things exclusively for us. These are our designs. We're not going to find them anywhere else, you know, and it's just a really great working relationship with a true artisan. Are these solid gold cufflinks functionally any different from the solid silver versions? No, they're not, because, you know, they're made in the same molds. There's no difference in that regard. The difference is the weight, because, you know, gold has a different density, and depending on the alloy, it changes slightly, right? But roughly, I would say, you know, expect this to be 50% heavier than the sterling silver version. But otherwise, it's the same. It takes about, you know, I would say 8 to 12 weeks for delivery. You know, why does it take so long? Well, you know, first, you know, we have a conversation about what it is that you'd like. And then once we finalize the design, you know, and have the final pricing, because, you know, with so many different options, so many different stones, we have to figure out what it is that you want. Maybe if you have a budget, come up with different options. And once we're all on agreement, okay, this is what you want, then we kind of, you know, commission the piece, make sure we have to, you know, I have a gold account, you know, make sure we have the fine gold. The fine gold is then made into the alloy that we want. Then the alloy, you know, has to be shipped to the jeweler. They have to cast it, and then when it's cast, you know, have to check, is it all good? If there's, let's say, an air bubble or something that didn't work out, you have to redo the entire process. Then you have to, you know, take it out. You have to kind of polish it. You know, you have to finish it. You have to kind of tumble it, and for, you know, our silver cufflinks, we use those, you know, we ordered them in batches, multiple at a time, and then they're kind of treated in drums, and that can be done more, you know, cost effectively, so to speak. If we do it with a pair of custom cufflinks that are gold, you know, we only use handwork, right? It's a bit like with a suit, you know, maybe with a made-to-measure suit. Yes, you can have a full canvas, but there's probably less handwork involved in it than if you have a full bespoke suit, for example. It's the same thing here. If you get a pair of custom cufflinks, it's entirely done, you know, by hand in the exact way that you like. You know, maybe you're like, well, I'd like a satin finish, or I'd like this, you know, like this or like that. You know, we can come up with things and do things that you like. If you say, well, I want a completely new animal designed, right? We can do that. It will take even longer though, because then you have to kind of carve the whole thing from scratch. You know, it'll also be quite a bit more expensive depending on the time that goes into it. and all that stuff. And so, like I said, for these, we paid $6,000 for each model of them. So it's like, you have 4 animal cufflinks, it's $24,000 just for the carving. You don't have anything there. So it's possible to do that. It's just a matter of what's your budget and how long do you want to wait, basically, right? And yeah, that's how it goes. Now, from now until like June 29th, if you are interested in a pair of cufflinks and you buy them, we'll throw in a pair, we throw in a $400 gift card to our shop so you can buy, something else that you like. The idea is that we want, to make, we always say, the best deal you'll ever get is when we launch something. And true to that, this is the best deal you will get. And we don't accept like coupons or discount codes for gold, stuff like that, because gold is quite expensive, and the margins, when this is not big, we want to give you a good price. And yes, it's expensive, but it's also because the cufflinks are so heavy. If you have if your cufflinks weigh 36 grams, that just is a lot of gold in there, and it just costs a lot. The product page notes that while the current selection of semi-precious stones are limited, the customer can request others. What limitations are there to this customization? Okay, so let's say we have right now we have these cufflinks here, right? There's like a malachite, there's an onyx, there's a lapis lazuli, there's a carnelian. I think we have a tiger's eye. If you're like, I want an hematite, or if you're like, I want a pearl, we can do that. Basically, the sky is the limit, right? We can source whatever stone, special stone that you want, colored diamonds, sapphires, whatever it is, we can source it. Again, it's a matter of budget, right? If you want like diamonds in here, well, that's gonna cost a lot, right? Because they have to be custom cut and everything. Yeah, that's something. Now, a little stone in the eye here of the eagle, it's gonna be not so expensive. But, it's not just getting the stone itself, it's also setting the stone. Because putting a stone in there, you can just glue it in, or you can do it in the old craftsmanship way, where you basically have a prong. I mean, this is a good example, right? This is exactly like that. Your diamonds are set that way too. You have a prong, and the prong goes around it, and that way it holds it in place, right? So it's not a glue, but it's a prong. And that's exactly how stones are set. And so the setting, can also take quite a bit of time, even if you're kind of a trained jeweler. What other cufflinks design do you want to add to the collection? I'm always open to suggestions. I think I read that someone says, well, the lion and a lamb would be very Christian. So I'm like, well, since we already have a lion, probably adding another lion right now is not something that's on top of the agenda. But I always have ideas. There's really nice Art Deco designs or Art Nouveau designs. Ultimately, I'm all ears as to what you're interested in, and if I come across something that's really cool, I'm open to adding it. But as I said, starting something like new like that is always costly and expensive. I considered even doing things like rings. Shall we do custom rings? The problem with stocking them, it's like you have all these different sizes. So I think custom, especially for gold, is the only option. In silver, you can maybe, could stock them, but even that would be tricky. But having different options and then also having different, engravings and all that stuff could be really, really cool. I like jewelry. I have lots of rings, I have cufflinks, and whenever I see something that's interesting, I'm like, ooh, that is cool. Or if I have a vision in my head that I haven't seen yet, I'm like, that could be fun to do that. And over time, we try to slowly expand our range, but of course it also has to go in line with how we sell things, right? Just to make it all work. Will you offer collar jewelry in solid gold next? That would be interesting if we could, do that. I think there's a stability element to that. if there's a demand, we could certainly do it. But again, we also offer these studs, in gold. So if you want a full gold dress set, we can do that. I don't know. It's something that we'll consider. What are the other alloys used in this solid gold? So the question is, what other elements of metal are in there? And frankly, I don't, like I said, there are over 20 different alloys. I don't know all of them by heart, right? With white gold, you typically get that white effect by adding like palladium. I think there's typically silver in it. There's like copper if you want the red tones, and other metals. I'd have to look at the very specifics to understand and see what we would need for each one of them. Do you like the American sack suit? It's kind of funny. I live in the U.S., and when I did not live in the U.S., I remember these books, they talked about, ooh, this is the American style of the sack suit. It's no padding in the shoulder and no darts, and this is, very natural shoulder and all that stuff. And, the Italian suit means a lot of shoulder padding. It was just based on the time in the 80s, the Armani suits and stuff like that. They had a lot of padding. Now, Italian suits are more, I would say, associated with no shoulder padding whatsoever, especially like in Naples and in warmer places in Italy. So I always take that stuff with a grain of salt. I very rarely see actual men here wearing sack suit these days. I think it's more of a thing of the past. So if I'd come across one that was a truly an original sack suit, I would probably admire it just for its rarity. I can't say that I myself have a sack suit in that style. Do you have any advice for a young demographic that would want to get involved in classic menswear? Well, it depends on what it is that you want to do. If you're like, I want to make this my career path, I think there are lots of different paths, right? It's like you can maybe start a made-to-measure company. I've met lots of young men who went down that route. Like they find a factory in China or Europe or elsewhere, and then try to sell suits to people. You'll find, that while you are in the clothing business, ultimately it's a selling position, right? So it's like understanding what is it that you like. Do you like being around people, and sell to people? Do you like to be on your own and write? Well, if so, then this is probably not a good way to do things. You can always try to find a job, and see where, you could start at a haberdashery or like at a tailor, you can try to find an apprenticeship. I would say, the internet is there, and there's so much great knowledge now. There's a tailor's academy in London that you can go to. You can go to a tailor. I would say it's important that you gel with that personality, and that you're excited about the project, and that you can get, value to their business, because as an apprentice, it takes a lot of time to train you. So ideally you give, value back to the business so they can make it work, and then you'll learn better too. Otherwise, like making like general suggestions like that are hard to do. I started this with, I had a legal background. I knew this was my hobby, and I just started this. Of course, things always change, You can't just do the exact same thing later. It's like Amazon. If you make a website today that looks like Amazon looks today, I guarantee you will not be successful, right? Amazon did it in a way, and they're successful now, but just because you copy them doesn't mean you're gonna have the same success. Around how much extra would it cost to commission a unique design, a bear and a bull, for example? It would depend on, first, the cost for the carving, right? So I would say, that's probably, depending on how complex it is, but I would estimate a minimum of $6,000 for that. And then, you'd have the gold, and then the manufacturing and everything of that. And, sometimes when you have, for example, a pair of cufflinks, there are changes you have to make. So for example, if you look at this fox, for example, right? The goose was quite big. So when they were made, I put them in, and I realized, ooh, this is actually really difficult to get in. So we had the goose made smaller. Same things here with a horse, right? For example, if you look here, the stirrup. This was the original stirrup. And I put it in and I was like, this is actually too small. It may accidentally come out. So then, you had to go back and carve an entirely new stirrup in a much larger version. So, these are all the things of product design that come into play that, when you create a new piece, that all goes into it, right? So if you just make it for one-off pair of cufflinks, all these costs really add up. Now for, if we do a range of cufflinks like this, we think it through in its entirety. We make sure everything is perfect to the T, we test it before we run the production cycle, because the last thing you want is, use expensive precious metals, make them just to realize, hey, this is not right. So, yeah, if it was just, the bear and bull, I would say, but then it's also the question is like, how heavy are those cufflinks, right? Because for example, the lion ones are, I think, our lightest weight ones, right? These ones, even they're going to be they can be twice the weight, so that hugely impacts the price as well. And then also, there's an element of, for example, these cufflinks here, they're so big and solid that on a silver, especially if you cast multiples, what can happen is that, you cast them and then, 40% of the cufflinks are unusable and have to be sent back to be melted down. That adds to the cost too, right? So all these elements that you don't even think about as a customer that we have to kind of price in. And so I can't make, general things like, oh, a bear and bull would cost this much more. No, because we have to look at, well, how big is the bear head supposed to be? How is it all going to look? What do you want? How many flexible parts do you want that have to be cast separately? All these things come into play. You mentioned selling old cufflinks that you no longer wear. Where do you sell them? eBay? Yes, you can sell them on eBay, but honestly, in every city, you have jewelers that always have to sign, buying gold now. And that's usually based on, the daily value of the gold price. They give you a little less because they have to actually, scrap that metal, melt it and all that stuff. But you get a rate that is based just purely on the weight of the items. And you can sell them there depending on how quickly you need the cash. If you can sell it on eBay or First Dips or elsewhere, people will maybe, you can charge more because, you're like, well, you're not just buying the gold, you also buy things that, that the workmanship and the design, and if you like the design, you get a better deal, so to speak. Are gold cufflinks a better investment than a luxury watch? Well, it depends, right? Like I think we did a video in the past about like Rolex watches and are they worth it? And historically, they've gone up. I think during the pandemic there was a high. Now they're down quite a bit. If you look at the gold price and how it evolved, over the last 15 years, it's more of a steady curve up. Now, gold also doesn't pay you dividends in a way, right, as like stock would, for example, but especially in a time of, uncertainty, which we're experiencing right now, like gold has been going up considerably, right, to the point where, if you bought gold in December, well, now it's 25% more, right? So it can go really quickly. And gold is, most people in the world associate gold with something valuable. So I doubt, that'll go away anytime soon. So in my mind, if you have a pair of gold cufflinks like this, you can easily take them and melt them down. With a watch, even if the watch is gold, you can maybe use the case, but at different parts. If they're gold, it's much more complex to kind of sell them in that way. So I think it's much easier to get rid of gold and sell it because it's commoditized in a way. And it's, you can do it now, right? If you need money now, I can take this cufflink and sell it within the next half hour, no problem. With a watch, it may be more difficult, right? You have to maybe find the right dealer, you have to take a much bigger cut and lose a lot more money if you want to sell it right now. I think that's a big advantage of gold. Do you buy gold jewelry just for the gold? there was a time when early on, I was like, oh, all I can wear now is gold cufflinks. And so I only bought gold cufflinks. And, they were just, I realized they were ugly, and then I'm like, why am I wearing something that's ugly, but it's gold? So I got rid of all of them and sold them, because I'm like, what's the point, right? Wearing something just because it's gold, it seems strange. But if it's really nice, right, and I like it, then I want to have the gold. And I just found, I like wearing rings. And hey, if I can buy gold rings, and for rings, if you want a gold ring, if you just plate the ring, because you use it with your hands and you touch things all the time, you shake hands, you wash things, they wear a lot faster. Like the plating wears off a lot faster than, let's say, in a pair of cufflinks. They're just subjected to less everyday wear. So for rings, I would not recommend you get a gold-plated ring, because the plating will always rub off. And so I'm like, yeah, I can buy these rings and I can enjoy them. And 20 years from now, if maybe I don't like them anymore, if I need money, I can easily sell them and I made money. To me, it's an investment I get much more joy from than if I maybe have a stock that's sitting somewhere that I don't touch, right? To me, that's just very, very enjoyable. So if I come across something where I'm like, ooh, I like the design, and if I know the gold price is, let's say, $3,000, and someone sells this to me for $1,500, yes, I'll buy it just for the gold, because I can flip it around and make 100% profit right away. I'll do that. Why would people sometimes do that? Not everyone knows what the gold price is at a certain point in time, and I've seen people, maybe they bought it at a certain rate and now they're selling it 10 years later, and they just look at what they bought it for and maybe just want to mark up over that or want to sell it for the same. There are all sorts of reasons why people do things. But yes, if I see solid gold stuff that is there, yeah, I buy it. Now, because gold is so popular and so expensive, there's lots of fakes out there too. There's like, fake gold bars and whatnot. I mean, yeah, people buy them at Costco and try to resell them. So I would say, buyer beware. Buy from a trusted source. Otherwise, that cheap gold thing that you thought you got turns out to be a very expensive fake. What are the differences between platinum and white gold as far as the looks? Right now, platinum is, I think, about like the third of the cost of gold. And there was a time, when platinum was more expensive. It's also different in the workmanship, and because it's a harder metal, you can maybe do more intricate designs in platinum. Yeah. So, for example, if you look at the Cartier watch, for example, right, they have a solid gold version, like 18 karat, and then they also have a platinum version. And platinum is always more expensive, even though these days the raw materials, the gold is a lot more expensive than the platinum, because platinum hasn't increased in value as gold has. So I think for investment reasons, I always prefer gold. Platinum sometimes, historically, if you find platinum jewelry, because it was more expensive, it was only used with the best stones. So if you find old platinum jewelry, you know that it's probably done at a very high quality of workmanship, even though you may not have seen it. That can be an advantage. But otherwise, yeah, we use the white gold, and it has platinum in it to give its color, and that's really it. Yeah. So ultimately, if you buy a pair of custom cufflinks, and we fully understand this is not for everyone, right? This is a special thing for people who just want the very best in jewelry and want a custom piece. But if that is you, if you're interested in that, and if you see the value, or if you want to make a gift to someone that means a lot to you, then yes, we're here for you. And from now until June 29th, we'll add a $400 gift card to our shop when you buy a pair of cufflinks. There's no code you need. You just add the pair of cufflinks, and the gift card is automatically added for free. It's then added to your account, and you can spend it as you see fit. Again, this is the best deal you'll ever get for this. Maybe if the gold prices for some reason go down a lot, will change. But again, you know, I haven't seen it happening in the past. And yes, the past is not a predictor of the future, but you know, if I had to bet, I'll make my bet on gold. And so with that being said, I look forward to, you know, designing your custom piece of jewelry with you, if this is something that you like. If you know, if you like the motifs, but you just don't care about the gold, or it's just out of your budget range, we have them all in sterling silver, and you know, they're heavily, thickly gold plated, and or blackened like these, or like platinum plated, and you can enjoy these too. They're very nice cufflinks too. They're a fraction of the cost of our solid gold cufflinks, but yeah, they're just different things, right? Can't compare apples to oranges. That being said, if there's no more questions, thanks for tuning in. And if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to contact@gentleman'sgazette.com. Happy to help you out.